Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this second episode of the third season of Kouryer podcast. My name is Ramteen, your host, and our today's guest is Mr. Viktor Kam. He's a video game artist with over 10 years of experience from Vancouver, Canada. And of course, in the for contact section, as always, you can find the link to his art station. And if you wanted to contact him, you can, of course, find his email through there. I didn't put the email in the caption, so in case anyone actually wanted to contact you, would go through the effort and finding the email. And last but not least, there's also a link to his, I think one of your blog spots, like weblogs you used to have, you would post, art posts as well. I
Oh
put a link to that.
yeah. People actually visit that thing. That's cool.
Yeah, I put a link to that as well in case people wanted to see more personal stuff. And now, with that introduction out of the way, how are we doing today?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. It's a little cold up here in Canada. It's a bit of a snowstorm, and I work from the garage, as you can see from my back. So it's a little bit chilly for artwork nowadays. But yeah, thanks for having me.
My pleasure, man. And yeah, actually, I kind of like, working in places that usually, like, let me explain this thing. It's weird for me, but I would sometimes have better focus, like in some sense mentally, if I, for example, have to do homework or study somewhere other than a library or a cafe or even in my house, like studying in some random place, in a city. Like I swear, I sometimes do that. Like I think like garage would be, for some reason, for me would be this calming, cozy place. I don't know. Like, is that a
Yeah,
weird
no,
thing,
definitely.
or
No,
do you
I
experience
totally
it
agree
as
with you. I
well?
mean, I normally will work like on the dinner table on like a laptop kind of thing, but because I have kids now and it's just crazy in the house, I can't get anything done. So we decided to like move all my stuff into the garage, which is it's cold, but it's like my man cave basically. It's a little bit stinky as well, but whatever gets the job done, right?
Yeah, exactly. And well, let's jump into the first signature question, which I start a conversation with every guest, which is give us a little introduction on how we got into the world of visual arts and design. Basically, tell us the origin story of how you became an artist.
Yeah, so definitely. I still remember like when I was like really young, even like before kindergarten. I don't even know how old that was. I used to watch like a ton of cartoons. I think my mom put me in front of the TV for like 3 hours a day. That was parenting back in the day. But I always knew that I wanted to do something with artwork. I think at the time was mostly like Disney animations because I just loved the characters from their shows, and I was a big fan of like He-Man and Care Bears and stuff like that back in the day, and Ninja Turtles and stuff. So I think I already kind of knew at that time when I was really young. I'm like I really enjoy doing this. Like I want to do this, as a full time gig at some point. I don't know if a kid that young thinks about that, but for some reason I remember that moment, and then here I am. So.
All right. And were you originally studying art and design, or you were pursuing another career path? Like, I mean, when you were in high school and we were thinking of picking a major or stuff like that. Did you choose from that point that you were like, oh, okay, I'm going to for art, or something like that, or basically tell us how the situation was.
Yeah, I can. I clearly remember what happened in high school and post grad and stuff like that. So I, had that passion for art always in the back burner. I never really pursued it through my teenage years, but as like kind of growing up in a family of Asian parents, they're like, you have to go to university, obviously. So I barely squeaked into university, and then I think the moment that I decided to actually drop out of university and pursue art was we had like this field trip. It was a geography class, so we studied like soil and things like that. We had a field trip at like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. like at grass field, and it was pouring rain in the fall, and I was super excited to do it. I was like, hey, cool field trip, man. So we went out there and we had like thermometers, and we just like measured the temperature of like dirt, and we recorded it. And then the teacher's like, all right, go home, that's it. And I was just like soaked, super cold, and I was like, I'm measuring dirt at 7 in the morning. I don't ever want to do this like for the rest of my life. And at that moment, that day I went to my parents. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I need to change and do something that I really enjoy. And of course, as a teenager, I played tons of games. I did tons of artwork as well. Kind of like just always was curious about artwork, and they reluctantly allowed me to drop out of university and take. It wasn't art school at the time because there wasn't really many art schools back then. It was more of a game design school with artists as like a art as a supplementary course to it. So there was only like one game art school or gaming school in the local area. So that's where I decided to shift my focus to.
Yeah, actually, here's an interesting thing because I think I was 16 or something or younger than that. I at the time I was just googling like because I was born and raised in Iran. I'm originally Iranian, by the way. All right, and of course, internet was there. You could Google it, stuff like that. But I was kind of oblivious to the whole world of that you can even be an indie game developer. There's a ton of opportunities and jobs out there. So I've always were inclined towards game industry and just video games in general since I was a kid. But I never know. So I remember one time I kind of googled video game university major, and I found, I think, a link to a Full Sail University video game course in Florida. I don't know, it's probably famous by now. And at the time, I think I just emailed them randomly for an application, and they would give you free consultation call. And you have no idea, as like a 16-year-old Iranian teenager, getting a random call from USA, and you were like, "Oh my god, they like me, they applied me," and they were talking to me. And I remember the whole package of, like, I think a 4-year degree there. I think it was a 3-year degree with MacBooks and softwares and everything. It was around $63,000 or something
Oof.
for that time. Yeah, right now I'm 25, so it was around 9 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. So of course, we didn't couldn't get it, but to me it was interesting because at the time the visa restrictions wasn't that bad for Iranian students. But the thing now that after all these years I realize is just if you really get good at laser focus on a specific field and discipline, then that could be handy in the industry. You're gonna get hired by some company, because there's always new IPs being developed. It could be maybe you get super good at making good foliage texture, or it could be just you've gotten super good at I don't know, blocking out a stylized, modeling a stylized assets. Like, I think just going, I know it sounds like a weird, kind of scary advice because everyone tries to fit their art style and portfolio and resume to the mold of the industry so they could get hired faster. And that kind of kills the creativity to an extent, I think. And of course, I haven't been hired by a AAA in a studio yet. So, of course, I understand if anyone doesn't want to listen to my advice, but this is what I'm personally doing. I'm just getting laser focused on, the things I love, which is, stylized environments, and assets and just that whole world setting. And we'll see where it goes. But I said this right now so I can, get your feedback as well. What do you think about what I said?
Yeah, I totally agree with, like, if you're trying to get hired specifically to a specific company or a certain style of game that you want to work on, you kind of do have to like appeal to the masses of like what people are hiring. Unfortunately, that does kind of kill your creativity, right? And if you want to do some more like personal things that you like doing. So for me, like kind of earlier in my career, I started off at Electronic Arts working on the Need for Speed franchise, which is like a racing game. If you guys haven't played it, doing racing games as an artist is like, it's kind of fun as a junior, but it's not the most like creative type of work. And I really wanted to do, because I liked cartoons back in the day, I liked more stylized artworks. So I kind of had to cater my portfolio towards what these big companies were hiring at the time. Over time, though, however, like I just was artistically frustrated with a lot of it because I wanted to make cool stuff, right? Like fun stuff. I was lucky enough to like go to a studio that was actually working on like artwork that I really liked to do. But kind of like the overall, what I'm trying to say is like, it depends what your goal is, right? Really, if you want to express yourself personally, there's a like, unless there's a company that's like hiring exactly for your creativity and your specific style, it's gonna be a little bit more difficult to do that unless you kind of cater your portfolio towards what people are looking for, unfortunately. And that's something that I battle with like myself like day to day as well too, because I love making like weird stuff, but no one's really going to hire me for that kind of stuff, unfortunately. So there's always this kind of balance of like, okay, well, if I'm working on a new piece, like a new art piece, how do I kind of allow my creativity to show through, but also appeal to employers to make me more hireable, if that makes sense. So you're not the only one that's like struggling with that kind of stuff. Like it's normal, I think. But you really have to kind of understand like, hey, what do you want to do, right? I actually told my manager that at one point too. I was like, okay, I do my work at work, but I have my own creative time outside of work. it's not the easiest way to balance it, especially if you have a family, but I kind of have to do it because I need a creative outlet outside of work to do my own stuff. If that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, I was just going through your art station and stuff, and works. I really like them. Some of I really like your hard surfaces, spaceship designs specifically. They look really, clean and like has really nice design, like with the colors and
Thanks, nice.
everything. And yeah, I also, wanted to mention something that right now, I mean, of course, the big hot topic in the industry is like, AI art. Of course, don't worry. If you want, we don't have to go through that beaten path. But the thing is, since it's a fresh topic and a lot of my, friends are actually super anxious, and they kind of lost motivation to work. And what do you think? Just as a quick note, if you want to like add any comment or any opinion about that, what do you have to say?
Yeah, man.
Actually?
I mean, like so when like the whole Midjourney thing kind of took off, I was using the beta stuff and it was just amazing. I was like, holy cow, this is super cool to be able to create these things. But kind of over time, like so what I like to do, like I really enjoy the craft of making artwork. Like I love to like sculpt every detail, make every texture, kind of get your hands like nitty gritty in it. I appreciate people that spend hundreds of hours to like make one finished piece because you kind of have that satisfaction of doing that. My overall opinion with the AI stuff is like there's a place for it, but as someone who comes from training like lots like thousands of hours and paying lots of money for education to do this stuff by hand, it's actually kind of put me in a place where I wouldn't say like I'm depressed or whatever, but like it's kind of made me a little bit less motivated to work on my own side projects because of how easy it is for someone who doesn't know or have any training to create what I'm almost trying to create with like a click of a button, right? So it has made an effect on me personally. Like, to be honest, like I can't say that it hasn't, but it's also, we have to also understand that like you can't really be a dinosaur in this industry. Like things move so fast. If you kind of hold on to your old ways and not embrace technology, like you have to embrace these things. As soon as things come out, it's usually a little bit disruptive. People are kind of like up in arms, like, "Oh, what's this whole thing? I don't want to use that. It's not an artist tool, whatever." Like a lot of a good example of that is like the whole Substance tool set, like Substance Painter and those things. People were doing things in Photoshop, right? And a lot of people still love Photoshop. They don't want to go full procedural, right? And there was a big uproar when Substance Painter kind of came out. At least that's what I felt when I was working with it in the industry. And then now just people just embrace it, right? So I think that's kind of what's happening with the whole AI art shift. It probably hasn't really got there yet, but people are going to embrace it. People are going to find ways to utilize it and put it in their artwork and use it in a good way. So yeah, I think it's just going to take time for people to kind of accept it and embrace these things, right? It's with any new technology. That's what I find.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's the same thing, by the way, in other communities as well. Like, you get that thing, in even programming, coding communities. There's always fight, which IDE is better. It's like, why are humans so tribalistic? Honestly. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
yeah, we're all trying to make something cool, and new things are going to be disruptive, but like you just have to kind of take a step back and appreciate for what it is and just try to take it. And I find that if you want to grow as an artist, especially in the tech age, you have to embrace technology. If you don't embrace technology, you're going to get left behind, unfortunately, right?
Yep. Couldn't agree more, honestly. And well, of course, we've talked about some of just general stuff, but now I want to actually ask you about some of your personal professional experience. Like, I want to know what has been your main branch of design has been that you've been focusing on throughout your art journey and career, and tell us about your experience from the start of it until now. And what I mean by that is, like, what specific position have you been filling in the companies you've worked with? uh, I've seen some of your experience in your art section, about section, but I want to hear it from you now.
Yeah. So I got a quite a weird resume. I think like kind of a weird journey. And I'll kind of just start from the beginning and hopefully not take up the whole hour that we have because this is a bit of a long journey. But just kind of sum things up. Like when I got hired for my first job, I wanted to be an artist. Like my portfolio was had characters in it and cool models and stuff like that. When I got hired as a junior, obviously I was going to take any job I wanted. I kind of got pigeonholed into like doing more game design work. So I wasn't really like modeling stuff or texturing things or making cool like scenes. It was my first job, so I had to kind of do that, right? So I got kind of stuck doing that for a few years. And then was able to finally get like an artist position, but I was still kind of pigeonholed into like a game designer kind of role, and I was really hard to kind of break out of that. So, and the unfortunate thing with that, like a lot of people just didn't give me the opportunity to become what I wanted to become. So people would hire me for my previous experience of like design work kind of thing, and I really didn't want to do that. So what kind of happened was there was like during the recession of like 2008, I think it was, got laid off and stuff like that. And I kind of just reinvented my whole portfolio. I literally just stayed up like day in day out, just working till like 4 a.m. every day on my portfolio. And I think if you look at my art station, like the very bottom of it is a lot of like these Unreal, like the airplane with the crash through the thing and stuff like that, and the big castle thing and all that. Like those were projects that I did. Like I was like, okay, I have to make something cool enough that like people would hire me, right? And it was really, really difficult, obviously, at the time. So, I finally did that. And then the opportunities started to come where people wanted to interview me for artist roles. And I really didn't really start focusing on art until maybe about like years right now, maybe only like 5 years ago, when I was like really laser focused on artwork. And that's when I got the opportunity at Blackbird Interactive, which was the last place I worked at. They were really supportive of me pursuing my art career, and kind of mentored me and helped me kind of develop the visual style that I have. But it was a long grind to get there. Let's put it that way. So if I don't know if that answered your question, kind of just like talking a little bit around about, but what I'm focusing on now is like I do a lot of like tech art as well too, like on the side. I do a lot of like scripts and just like plugin building for Maya as well too. So whenever I do any type of task or work with the team, I always try to identify like what type of tools these guys can use to like just speed things up, even if it's like one extra click or something like that. So I do have a bit of a tech artist background as well too. So I do a lot of that, and my current like research stuff that I'm doing right now is mostly like just geometry nodes inside of Blender, learning more procedural workflows. And the reason behind that is like, even though I love sculpting things by hand, it's just like one of those things that it just takes so long during production to do that by hand. So procedural stuff and like AI based stuff is kind of like the way of the future, I think. And it's something that I need to, that I'm focusing on right now, just to kind of get up to speed, to kind of build my portfolio a little bit more towards like tech arty, but still showing some artistic stuff as well. Because you have to think about that when you apply for like a job, there's going to be like thousands and thousands of artists, right, that can make cool stuff. But if you're an artist who can also understand the technical bits of it and communicate to the technology team to help out with that, that's going to make you stand out from just like a typical artist, right? That's kind of how I see it. That's the position that I've been placed into, so people will hire me for my artistic work, but also my tech skills too, right? So it's kind of fun being able to do both. I do like doing both of those.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just to tie that with our previous subject, which was kind of AI, I think one of the new trends that I've been really witnessing right now in the industry, that a lot of the like well-known artists in the industry, they're all saying from now on, if you're a junior artist, start putting your process of your work in your portfolio as well. I mean, of course, like you naturally, even before the whole AI thing, people used to do that. That was a correct, um, well, norm of the whole thing, to how to set up your portfolio, to also put processes of breakdowns of your work. But right now, because of the whole AI thing, I think it's important to, I think, put that in your resume as well, because it shows
Right, yeah.
from the sketch idea phase to the blockout, the texture, to all the steps. So it's not just you didn't just take an AI prompt and just edited a bit, and you basically got off that. But I mean, here's my sense with AI. I mean, it's an amazing tool, and it could help us in the hard labor, manual labor type of stuff. But why people want to skip the fun part of art, which is like creativity and design and all that? Like that just baffles me.
Yeah, Yeah, it's really strange because like I think like when I approach people who aren't in the field and they're kind of like, oh, why do you want to spend like hours doing this like thing, sculpting a rock or like a statue like bit by bit? It's kind of those weird. I don't know. Maybe artists are just kind of crazy, right? But like you have to like to be good in this field, or not really be good in this field, but like to really stand out. It's like you have to enjoy the process, right? If you don't enjoy the process, probably shouldn't really be doing it. You know what I mean? Like I love the grind. I love grinding it out, like to do this because at the end of it, when I show you something like and you love it, you're like, that's super cool. I'm like, dude, I spent like 40 hours like working on this thing on my own blood and tears, right, or whatever. And it's just like so much more satisfaction coming out of that other besides just pressing like a button, right? That's kind of where I get out of it. And I think people don't understand like when you do personal work, it also is like a representation of like that point in my life as well too. So like each of those personal works on my art station, it's like I can look at that and I'm like, hey, my life was this particular way when I was doing that scene, and it kind of shapes how that was done. So it's a kind of a reminder for me of just like my journey through life as well too. So that's kind of why I really enjoy just doing art day to day.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, just want to quickly mention something that, for anyone who's watching this video on YouTube or listening to Spotify, I think you might have experienced some sort of lag or, disruptions in the call or recording. It's just because there's a snowstorm outside, in Vancouver right now, and sometimes we get those lags. So, yeah, it's normal. There's nothing wrong with your internet connection. You don't need to rewind back in the audio. It's just part of this podcast, all right? Just want to mention that as well. And all right, now speaking of processes and stuff like that, I want to know in general, for your own personal works actually, how does your design process usually go anytime you want to start working on a project? Like basically, what does the structure of your pipeline look like?
Yeah, so it's nothing too different than what a lot of artists you see out there do. It usually just starts off with actually it starts off with me playing games or watching movies first. That's always the beginning of it, or traveling, because you have to have some type of inspiration to come up with an idea. And it could be literally anything. It could be like a visit to like a temple, or like even just going to the mall or something like that, and just kind of looking at different things and just experiencing different things. After that, you kind of start to think like, hey, wouldn't it be cool? That's like my prompt. It's like, hey, would it be cool if this happened over here? And then I would start to obviously, this typical reference gathering of just Googling or Pinterest kind of thing, and just digging up ideas. But for the most part, when you gather reference, it's kind of all over the place. Like I kind of scattered the map of like random ideas. And then once I do a collection of a mood board, I try to narrow it down to like 2 or 3 specific images only. I think what some people do is like they have like a like a pure ref board of like 1,000 images, and it's just so scatterbrained, right? But you really have to like narrow it down to like 2 or 3. And I don't think it's really some people might feel ashamed that like, hey, if you copy a reference like one to one, it might be kind of like, hey, this is not being creative. But at the same time, I usually use like a piece of reference, and I don't do it like really one to one, but I use it I kind of block it out really close, because I just need a starting point to jump off of, right? I kind of try to leave a lot of the creative stuff like a little bit later, because having a blank canvas and like in Maya or Blender, it's a bit difficult, right? So I would try to mimic like what I see in the photo as close as I can, and then start making like creative tweaks to them, right? So an example of that is like, again, on my art station is like the airplane that crashed through like the swimming pool. I wanted to make an arc viz scene at first of a swimming pool. That's what that started out as, and then I'm like, hey, let's add some story to it. Let's add some like visual interest to it like afterwards, right? So I always start with like real life stuff and then kind of modify it afterwards, because when you start with blank canvas, it's hard, man. It's really difficult waking up to like, hey, you can't really be like super creative off the bat, and you're just gonna kind of burn yourself out, like kind of thinking like that. But once I have the blockout down, this is actually something that I'm trying to refine on my own as well too. Usually get your blockout and your lighting super important. Blockout and lighting and your camera, that's like number one thing, and try to spend as much time as you can there. And then once you get that locked down, it's really just as simple as going through each of the assets and just making them look as cool as you can. Because I do still shots, it's just based off of the camera angle, right? I don't try to do anything like too crazy. If it's more for real time, then you have to kind of spend more time on each asset because you're going to rotate around them and stuff like that. But that's essentially like my process with it. But I always try to put some twist to like everything that I do. Like if I make like a normal street scene, it's got to have something cool in it. Like if something had to have exploded or like had to have some kind of story to it. Because whenever you do a piece, you always want to try to put some type of story or history to it, because when people look at it, they want to be engaged in your image. They don't want to just look at another still image. They want to develop their own story within that image. That's kind of what I like to try to do, like have people interpret it a different way. So hope that kind of covers. It's a little bit vague, but it's a little bit different each time as well too when I work with those tools.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone's process of like coming up with ideas is different. Like for me, one of the main, it's kind of weird, one of the main places I get ideas from is actually my dreams, and I've been kind of doing that for writing, for art, for like the past a good 10 years, I guess. And have you ever used anything, any inspirations from your dreams as well?
Yeah, I think I did. But I always kind of forget them, you know what I mean? So I should like write them down. But I think one of my scenes I did was actually like from a dream, where I would think, or I would have actually, I keep going back to that swimming pool scene because that one took me like a long time to build. But I had a dream that I was in the swimming pool, like in Pripyat, which is by Chernobyl, right? I had a dream that I actually visited the site and I was like walking around there and looking at the materials and stuff like that. Um, but like if I could record my dreams a bit better, I would probably have more creative stuff. So it's definitely a cool idea to use your dreams for inspiration.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes like dreams are weird things. Sometimes you get just random meme compilations in your head. Sometimes you get actual like live action cinematic Hollywood blockbuster movies in your head. Like it's weird. Or sometimes you get meaningless nightmares. It's weird what your brain does at night just to keep itself entertained. Honestly.
Yeah.
And all right, actually, the next question is actually kind of pretty interesting one. I always get really cool answers from it. What was the first art job paycheck you ever got, and what was it for? When was it? Basically, tell us the whole story of your first ever money you made out of art.
First ever made money, like working for a studio or something, I guess.
No, in general, anything. It could be anything, just out of art, anything.
You know what? I think I did like a weird like TV animation for a friend of mine. I think her parents had like a TV show and they needed like a logo that like came in during the TV show. I had no idea what I was doing, to be honest. She knew I knew how to use computer and she knew I liked graphics. So I was like, okay. So I probably spent like 100 hours trying to make a stupid logo animate on a screen. Um, so yeah, I think I made like, I don't know, $100 off of that thing. Which was kind of cool. I never saw the show. I don't know if they even used it. I think it was pretty horrible. I also did like a map for a wedding invitation. Um, I don't think I got paid for that though. I think I might have just gotten like a bottle of wine or something like that. So, but outside of that, yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Yeah, I didn't really make too much money off of artwork other than that.
I mean, as long as the wine was a good wine, I mean, then you get paid well. I think I even
Yeah,
got
yeah.
paid once for beer and like not much money for a t-shirt design I did once a year. Like I
Nice, nice.
actually
Yeah.
like yeah. And all right, the next thing is, who are some of your favorite artists and designers that have inspired you the most?
Yeah, so for sure, when I was starting out in my career, I think Cecil Kim, who did all the stuff for God of War, like the concept art for God of War, he is huge inspiration for me. Like if you look at some of my earlier artwork, it's actually the stuff that's not even on ArtStation. Like when I was doing my portfolio, um, he was like huge inspiration for me. There's a lot of cool landscapes and Gothic architecture, and I loved God of War growing up as well too. But I think what really kind of got me wanting to do art was like actually just the Lord of the Rings series. Like when the first movie came out, I watched that thing like a million times probably, and I would just always want to build like Lord of the Rings looking stuff, and I still love that stuff. So the artwork in the cinematography in those series of movies, super huge inspiration for me. um Outside of that, like I love hard surface guys, like the guy who did box cutter. Oh god, can't remember his name already. But yeah, he was really influential on a lot of the work that I did. Oh, Master Xeon, yeah, from Blender. That guy was super awesome. Just the way that he works with like the sci-fi designs. So and Darko, no, Darmar, I think Darmar, who does the hard surface stuff. That guy's awesome.
Yeah, he was on the
Jama,
podcast as well, Dharma.
yeah, okay, that's what. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I noticed him on your podcast too. Yeah, he's super cool. Jama as well too. Jama Jubarov, I think his last name is. Really inspirational type of guy. But to be honest, like I take inspiration from a lot of my coworkers as well too. People that I've worked with in the past. It's just always like awesome being next to other artists. Either junior or super experienced. Just learn from everybody of different skill levels. So it's not really just people who are popular in ArtStation, but people that I meet as well too, and work from day to day, just like taking everything, just trying to like embrace everything, just being good to have the opportunity to be around these type of people and be influenced by everybody really. So but I think right now what I'm really kind of like enjoying is a lot of the just kind of like the Blender artists out there. One that I'm really liking right now is Max Hay, I believe. I think he's in Vancouver as well too. But it's just crazy like how fast these guys can like whip out these environment pieces. I'm just like, what the heck? It's like 10 minutes. Well, it's a 10-minute speed through, but like the way they do it is so different than what I'm used to doing, and the result is just stunning. So it's really cool that people are starting to embrace Blender's tool set to create speed environments, which is actually what I'm trying to do right now. Is just kind of get myself caught up with how those guys are building things that way. So a lot of Blender artists out there are really inspiring me lately.
All right. And what are you working on right now that you can tell us about? What kind of project is it? I mean, of course, if it's something that an Indian is involved, we can skip right past this question. But if that's not the case, what are you doing right now?
Yeah, so for my current work, I am currently working at Unity. um I'm sure everyone knows that there was a Weta acquisition on the Weta tool set, I think last year. So I'm part of that team currently. I can't really talk about anything else besides that. Outside that, I'm working with some of their tooling currently for my professional work. For my personal work, to be honest, I'm always a little bit scatterbrained. I'm actually trying to focus a little bit more on procedural stuff like geometry nodes, like I said earlier, and Houdini, but always just trying to build and trying to build quick environments actually inside of Blender. So those are gonna be my more of my focus. I think next year I'm gonna take like a really deep dive into Houdini, just because I see that a lot of their tools are kind of being more like it was already really adopted, but I see it like a lot now, and their tools have come a long way since like a few years ago. And it's a tool that I've always wanted to learn. I just never had the opportunity to do it, but now I'm gonna make make time to learn how to use that tool a bit better. So
And actually, speaking of Blender artists, you mentioned how I mean, of course, majority of like AAA studios, they all have big contracts with Autodesk and these big companies. So I wouldn't say that Blender will become like a major like that like become an industry instead of that much. I mean, of course, to an extent, in general, smaller studios, it could be easily in a standard, but how do you see the future? Like, you think Blender will be more adopted in the main pipeline, or in a sense,
yeah,
how do you see
that's a
that?
loaded question, man. That's a loaded
I
question.
know, I know.
I
Sorry.
know that. I can't. I don't want to say. I don't want to say the wrong things. I will piss a lot of people off. But I don't know, man. Like it's when I was working in studio, I would have like the standard production tools like Maya and ZBrush and all those things open, but I would always have Blender open on the side as well too. Um, and even though our pipeline wasn't like fully like a Blender pipeline or stuff like that, like there was always these small things inside of Blender that it's just easier to do in there. So I would kind of jump in there, do some work, and then export it back out to Maya to go into our pipeline. So whether or not that it's going to like become like a mainstream pipeline tool like in bigger studios eventually, it's hard to say. But from what I know, like a lot of studios, when they hire an artist, they kind of let them use whatever tool they want as long as it kind of goes through the final pipeline, whether that be like through Maya and then into the game pipeline. Um, that's fine as well too, right? Like I think just allowing artists to use whatever tools they want to get the job done the quickest as possible, and if Blender is part of that, that's super cool. Um, that's like all I can really say with that whole thing, because I know the reason why it's tough to kind of put say yes or no to that is because a lot of these larger film houses or game houses have been around for so long, so the pipelines are so set and rigid. You know what I mean? To kind of like rip it all out and put Blender in its place, it's a huge ask. Like to anyone who's worked in large pipelines kind of knows that, especially with like all the code that goes behind it and stuff like that. And it's like a huge task to be able to do that. So yeah, big question. Good question.
All right, thanks. But the thing is, because I kind of like around 3 months ago, I did a huge research actually on the qualifications required, for the job positions that I would like to work as a junior, because I'm also one of those artists who's trying to break into the industry as well, right? And I'm based in Istanbul. Of course, I checked, the studios in Turkey and also cities, internationally because for remote work as well. And what I realized is for most of them, it's kind of weird. Both small and big studios, like you get a majority of them that they are so rigid with their 3D software program of their choice. A lot of them just say Maya. We only know Maya and we only want Maya, and a lot of them just 3D Max. And bunch of them, a majority of them, like a huge chunk of them, which is actually fortunate thing, they say any 3D modeling software of your choice is fine. So that's why it's kind of conservative. Do you think if the direction goes through that, I think it would be much more better. I don't know, like because it's weird. Like for example, someone who works for 3D Max for 4 years, like I don't know, first as a hobby, then want to become professional, and then they see the job posting they want Maya, and it's kind of bummer.
Yeah, so I think like when it comes to that kind of stuff, like when I was starting out, I learned Maya in school, and then all the studios that were hiring were 3ds Max studios here. There was really no problem with that, like because you would just spend a week inside of Maya, and then you would just kind of like learn the tools that way. So, and the reason why behind that is like, okay, if you're coming from like if you're trying to be like a modeler, let's just say like let's take that as an example, like a modeler. To be honest, man, like modeling tools are the same. It's like it's extrude, bevel, cut faces. It's the same tool within different packages. You know what I mean? They could just be labeled and just somewhere else. So the fundamentals really doesn't really change from package to package. It's just kind of like where the tools are. But like everything kind of works the same. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So if you hire like a modeling specialist, I would expect them to be able to pick up any package really and kind of learn it quickly, because again the fundamentals are pretty similar, right? Yeah, I don't know if that really kind of helps at all, right? But what I'm trying to say is like if you know how to model in Blender, you're gonna know how to model in Maya and 3D Max. Like I don't see a problem with that at all, really.
Yeah, exactly, and that makes complete sense. But that what doesn't make sense is some of them in their application form they ask how many years of, for example, experience do you have with 3D Max, or they usually put some main questions that is important for their studio, like if you can commute to the studio, or do you have a bachelor's degree, or which I think that's still is a bit weird why they ask for bachelor's degree. And the other thing is they ask have you had experience like with Maya, or how many years of experience do you have with Maya or 3D Max because of their preference. So, and you have to be honest, so you say zero. Because if you say
Yeah,
2 years and and you tell them in the interview, oh, I can pick up any software pretty fast, and they're like not interested, that's just a weird attitude. And it's not just in Turkey, I've seen it in Europe and sometimes some other cities in
right.
America as well. Like, yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
think
weird.
yeah, I think it just depends on like how open the studio is, right? Like, and it really just depends on how rigid things are within the people who set up the original pipeline. There are going to be cases where they have to work inside of Maya because their whole base foundation of stuff is built around the tooling within that. I can totally understand that. Um, so like, I wouldn't say that it's like it's like unheard of to hear that, like that type of requirement on a specific resume. The reason behind it, yeah, that's obviously going to be up to the studio on its own, right? Like everyone's going to have a particular workflow and pipeline that they want to keep in house and not be flexible on potentially. So
Yeah, and well, let's actually get away from all these technical questions and go to something much more chill, which is what area beside the area you're working on right now would you be interested to explore and learn in the future? Basically, what I'm trying to ask is like, aside from arts related stuff, what other ambitions or aspirations do you have? What other hobbies do you want to learn? What other goals do you have in your life you want to achieve that is not related to
oh, man,
art?
that's another loaded question right there. Hey, you know what?
Exactly.
To be honest, I think about it all the time, man. Like, I would love to like not be in front of a computer anymore, but I do love doing art, and I just love technology. I think, um, so it's kind of the two kind of work out for me. I think the other thing that I enjoyed doing was actually I like teaching as well too. So I was a teacher for a few years. So being able to teach art to other people, that was super cool. It's still kind of like the same type of industry, but I like just like helping people get better at what they do and explaining how things work. So I guess I could be I would be like a teacher or something like that. But if it's like nothing to do with like artwork, I don't know, man. I kind of just want to just stay home and just be a dad and just like not work at all. If that was possible, you know what I mean? So, but I think I'll always do artwork at some point. Like I don't think I can really give it up. Yeah.
No, I didn't mean like necessarily give it up. Like it's other
Right.
things
Right.
aside from like because like I get some interesting answers sometimes. Some people, like someone once said, I forgot who they were. Like said they want to have their own cafe someday. As a
Yeah.
retirement
Yeah.
plan, and just live there. And just enjoy baking cookies and serving people good
Yeah.
coffee. Or another one was they wanted to, I think, um, pursue martial art actually, because they used
Yeah.
to
That's
practice
awesome.
martial art for a while, but they wanted to pursue it professionally after that. Like the reason I'm asking this, because for anyone who's also listening, most of us probably, if you're listening to this podcast, me, you're in the field of art, all right. And what I want to point out is that there's more to life than what we're doing, and it's good that we're all trying to pursue and just get good at what we're doing, get hired, get all that good positions and experiences and connections, all that good stuff. But it's important to also sometimes zoom out and see what else we're missing, like our health, like how much we're exercising, how much and it's
Actually,
kind of
yeah. I mean,
ironic.
yeah. That's one thing that I would love to do is actually just be in like sports or something like that. Just because like I mean, I'm from Canada, so we all play hockey up here. I love playing hockey. I still play hockey a lot, but as you get older, you realize like how important like your health is, and like sitting around is like not a good thing. But if I had to pursue a different career, yeah, I'd be in sports, man, for sure.
Interesting. Yeah. And yeah, basically, there's more to life, than what you're doing. And I'm not saying that to an artist. I mean, if you're like any profession, and just try not to get too like and it sounds like a counterintuitive advice, but try not to get drowned in it and just not missing all other parts of life. That's what I'm trying to say. And basically, where we reached the last question and section of the podcast, which is called time capsule. And as the name suggests, I think you can understand what it's going to be. Basically, imagine we're recording this and it's going to be saved for for anyone at any point of time in the future. They'll be able to listen to this. So now that you have this window of opportunity, what does Viktor Kam has to say? It doesn't have to be anything art related. It just has to be anything. What are you going to leave leave to any future, anyone in the future who might
Mm.
listen to this?
Let's see. That's a good. Trying to think of something wise to say. Um, don't never let anyone tell you that you can't do something. That's that's what I'm gonna let the podcast end with. And the reason why I say that is because I always wanted to be an artist, and I've had many people say that I couldn't be an artist. And now I'm an artist. I also wanted to be a teacher, and I've had many people say that I'll never be a teacher, and I just kept working my ass off, and I became a teacher as well too. So, yeah, never let anyone say you can't do something. I think that's what I'm gonna leave it with.
All right, and thank you so much for your time and coming on this for this episode. This is 202. This is a real pleasure. And where can people contact you if they had any questions? Is their email address good?
Yeah, yeah. Email on the art station is good.
Yeah.
Definitely feel free to hit me up if you guys have any questions. Yeah.
All right, awesome. And well, again, thank you so much for coming by, and thank you to anyone who tuned in to listen to this episode or watch this episode on YouTube. I hope you all enjoyed this as well. And I kind of mentioned this before in two episodes ago, like around episode 200, but where I'm just 1/5 of the way there to one of my main goals, because what I want to do, I want to do at least 1,000 episodes, and I've said that multiple times. And yeah, I'm 1/5 of the way there. I have to like repeat this 4 more times to get there. And it's taken me like around like 2 years and a half, and my upload consistency has been pretty, inconsistent, to be honest. Like, because when I started it, it was at the start of like, COVID, to be honest, at March 2020. And I did like 5, 6 episodes, then I stopped for 7, 8 months. Then I started again pretty hard for like a year and a half. Then it stopped again in the last summer. So yeah, it's been pretty all over the place, and my upload frequency has gotten much lower. But I will, that's one of the things I want to do in my life, like do at least 1,000 guest interviews. Like, that's it. And thank you so much for helping me with that, Mr. Cam.
Awesome. Thanks for
And
having me, man.
my pleasure. And that's about it. Take care, everyone. Till next episode. Take care, stay safe, and bye bye.